My name is Yves Nougarede. I am working from the Annecy International Film Festival, which is actually the biggest and oldest festival dedicated to animation in the world. I started my studies in cinema, but without knowing at all what I was going to do after those studies. And then just a little bit before that, I started to make animation with Super 8 camera, with plasticine clay, like perfectly for StopTrik. Then I realized that I was not talented at all for that. Well, at least not patient enough for this kind of work. And at that time in France, the military service was compulsory. Mm-hmm. So I had two options. Either I was making the military service inside the military stuff for 1 year, or I refused to do it, but I have to find a society or company who would hire me for 2 years with very low wages. And of course, in my region there is Annecy Film Festival as well as Fatić Balance Production, mm-hmm. which is a very famous French production company. So I made my request to both Annecy Festival and Fatić, and Fatić never answered me. But the festival say, "Oh, we like your curriculum vitae, your experience, so it's up to you to decide whether you want to come to work for us or not." Of course, I replied, "Yes, well, pleasure." So it all started with this. I've been doing my anti-military service for 2 years inside the festival and at the films department. So my main job at that time was to making some archiving, receiving, because at that time submission form were on paper, so I have to database the 1,300 entry form we were receiving. Also another point is that when I started to work, it was in 1996. At that time the festival was still biannual. So 1993, 1995, so you can imagine that 2 years a gap between two editions, there were not so much things to do, you know. And luckily, I started in 1996, and so my first festival was in 1997, and the year after, with some political funding, some feedback all over the animation world, we managed to make it annual. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the best opportunity for me to make my to dig my hole inside the organization. And yes, it all started like this. So now I'm still working for them. And like I was saying, my main job was archiving, databasing the entry form, but also screening the films to the selection committee. Mm-hmm. So this is what I did for maybe 15 years. So I've been able to have very good culture of independent animation, learning with the selection committees, talking about films, and of course eating a lot of films each year. And then in 2012 they came up to take the decision to leave the selection process to us, the films department. And well, something very very nice, but very hard at the same time, because now we are receiving something like 3,200 films a year, and for 3 persons.
Oh.
Yeah, well, we are 3 from Annecy, plus Marcel Jean, our artistic director from Canada, and as well another girl who is joining us for the short film selection. But still, it's a huge amount of films, and each year, after the 3-4 months of selection process, we don't feel very good. Because, like I say to everyone, quantity doesn't always mean quality.
Yeah. Yeah, but did the quantity come from the digitalization? Like can you just tell us a bit about your thoughts about digitalization? It might have helped with archiving, but did it help with making films, with having a chance to see more films? And
for both, I would call that dematerialization. Change. Actually, inside the history of cinema, we have been able to live the second revolution. First revolution was the appearance of sound in the early 30s, and now leaving all the 35mm prints, VHS or HD cam, Betacam, all the old stuff, analogic stuff that were used to screen the film, just throw it to the trash can, and learning kind of a new job, because we were used to carry to have a 35mm prints in our hands, to give it to the projectionist, to put them together, to screen it. And then now it's only HD files, and it's like 0 and 1, 0 and 1, 0 and 1. And it's kind of hard to deal with, because it's new technology. Now we are more like informaticians rather than projectionists or programmer or so on. And even for production company, it's hard, because I would like to give one example. Now the DCP, which replaced the 35mm good old print, you can send it digitally, and so of course you have a copy on your computer. If you send it digitally, you have anyway a copy. And some production company wrote me after the festival, said, "Hey, can you send my DCP back?" So I check out all my USB stocks. No, I can't find it. Then I check in my database and said, she just sent it by WeTransfer. So I cannot send you back a file that you already have, And this is all a new way of thinking about how to deal with this new process. But in a way, it's easier and faster. So I think it's all a benefit for both programmers, projectionists, filmmakers. But on the other hand, this liberty of producing makes film becoming longer and longer. Because after when you were shooting with 35mm, each second was counting. I mean, because you have to develop it, check it. Now you can shoot hours and hours and hours of films, and so now we have more and more films getting from 10 minutes to 20 minutes, even 30 minutes, and for me it's not a good thing. Because usually what it is said in 30 minutes, at the time of the 35mm print, they could have said it in 7 minutes. And for me, it's a major problem. But it is hard to say to creators, cut, please cut. Because I've heard about some animation teacher who was explaining to me that his student was so happy with the movement he just has done that no way to cut it from the film. Yeah, but then it's too long. Yeah, but it was so well animated. I don't want to cut this part because it was the perfect movement I did. Yes, but it's not very useful to the story, and then it's making the film longer and then less interesting. So yes, that's a hard point to deal with the upcoming of those new technologies. Yeah.
And what are your earliest or early childhood memories of films and animation and cinemas? Would you share some with us?
Yes, of course. That's a classical, but the first feature film I went to see in a real cinema was The Return of the Jedi. So a nice start. And as for animation, of course, like every child in the late 70s, I used to watch TV and children programs. And there was, I don't remind the title of this TV series, but I think it was Pio Miao, Italian TV series. And I was just, because I used to play with clay, of course, like many children, and I could not understand how all these shapes could change from a cat to another figure and I was really it was magical for me, and I wanted to understand how they managed to do that. So that's why I always been interested in animation, especially with stop motion with clay. And then the third major revelation I had was once I made a cinema study in Annecy. We've been asked to go to the Annecy Festival and to make some interviews of filmmakers. We were very young, but still. And apart from the screening, we had to go into cinemas. The Annecy town and festival has decided to make outdoor screening for the main audience. And one night they showed the second episode of Wallace and Gromit, The Wrong Trousers. And then, like Pio Miao, I was just, how is it possible to make such a masterpiece like this with clay? And yes, that's the three big cinema moments in my life that made me love cinema and, of course, animation.
Thanks a lot for sharing those memories. That's about it.
You're welcome.